Okay, so this is my PDP for goniometry, and today I am going to test Maylee's range of motion. The first thing we're going to do is shoulder flexion. And so Maylee, can I have your arm next to your side with your thumbs out? And I want you to bring your arm up as far as you can go. Okay, is that as far as you can go? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And so now I'm going to test it. Normal range of motion for shoulder flexion is 0 to 170 degrees. So my axis is going to be on Maylee's humeral head with my stationary arm parallel to her trunk and my movable arm parallel to the humerus. So I'm going to have you do that same motion. Raise your arm up. Great. Is that as far as you can go? Mm-hmm. Okay. So Maylee is at 160 degrees for shoulder flexion. So that tells me that she's in between the normal range of motion. So the next thing we're going to do is shoulder extension. And so I'm going to have her in the same testing position with thumbs out. And I want you to bring your arm back as far as you can go without compensating your shoulders. Good. Okay, now I'm going to test it. So go back to normal. And her axis is going to be on her humeral head and her stationary arm parallel to her trunk and her movable arm parallel to her humerus. So I'm going to have you go back. Is that as far as you can go? Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. So I measured 50 degrees and normal range of motion for shoulder extension is 0 to 60, so she is in between those numbers. Okay, so the next motion I'm going to have Maylee doing is shoulder abduction, and so I want your palms facing out next to your side, and I want you to go up, up, up. Good job. Okay, back down. And so normal range of motion for this is 0 to 170 degrees. Her testing position is going to be seated with her humerus in adduction and external rotation. The axis is going to be on her acromion process. The stationary arm is going to be parallel to her trunk, and the movable bar is going to be parallel to her humerus. Okay, so I'm going to have you bring your arm up again. That as far as you can go? Yes. All right, so for that I got 150 degrees and she is in normal range of motion for shoulder abduction. Okay, so the next motion I'm going to have Maylee do is shoulder internal and external rotation. So I'm going to have you go in this position and I want you to go down with your arm, so that's internal rotation, and then I want you to go up with your arm, that's external rotation. So her testing position is seated. Elbow flexed to 90 degrees, humerus abducted to 90 degrees, and your forearm is pronated. So can you get in that position again for me? So the axis is going to be on her olecranon process, and her stationary is going to be held in horizontal position, and the moving is going to be parallel to her forearm. So I'm going to have you bring your arm down. Nice, is that as far? Okay, so I got 75 degrees for that. Normal range of motion is 0 to 60, so she has a little bit extra. Now for shoulder external rotation, it's going to be the same with the humerus abducted to 90 and elbow flexed to 90 like this. Same. Her axis is on the olecranon process, and I'm going to have you move your arm up. Nice. Got 68 degrees for that, and the normal range is 0 to 80, so she's good. Okay, so the next motion I'm going to have Maylee doing is elbow flexion. So can I have your arm down by your side, and I want you to bring your elbow up like this. Nice. Okay, so now I'm going to place the axis on her lateral epicondyle. I'm going to put the stationary arm on her humerus and her mobile arm parallel to her radius. Okay, so now I'm going to have you bend your arm back up. Perfect. And I got 135. Okay, so the next motion is forearm supination. So Melee, I want you to get a 90 degrees, and I want you to flip your wrist over like this. Okay, good. So I am going to have the axis proximal to her ulnar styloid, and her stationary arm is going to be resting against the volar aspect of her wrist, and her mobile arm is going to be perpendicular to the floor. So now I want you to do that same motion. Perfect, and I got 90 degrees, so she's within normal. Okay, now we're gonna do forearm pronation. I want you to be in that same position, but now flip where your palm is against the floor. So I'm gonna go on this side. And now it's the same, but her axis and her stationary is gonna be on the dorsal side of her wrist. So I want you to put your palm down. Nice, and I got 85. Okay, so now we're going to do wrist flexion. I want you to bend your wrist towards you. Good job. I'm going to put the axis on her anatomical snuff box with the stationary arm up her radius and her mobile arm parallel to the metacarpal of the index finger. So I want you to bring your hand forward. And I got 80 degrees, so that's within normal limits. Now we're going to do wrist extension, so bring your wrist backwards. And this is gonna be the same lineup as the wrist flexion, so her axis is in the anatomical snuff box with the stationary arm up her radius and her mobile arm parallel to her index finger. So I'm going to have you bring your wrist backwards. Is that as far as you can go? Okay, she's at 70 degrees, so within normal limits. And that is my goniometry measurements.